for the session 5, and just a quick recap of what we did last time. Um, Let me share my screen. Okay, yeah. So this is the 5th session. In the last session, what we did was uh, HR strategy. As you know, in the initial part of our course here, we discussed the business strategy. In fact, we discussed quite a great deal of what we understand by business strategy, how it's important, and how we formulate business strategy. So that was my initial part of this thing. And in the last session, we picked up one of the functions. Uh, Organization has got number of functions like marketing, finance, HR, and all that. And we picked up on HR function because that's quite relevant to the course. And we discussed the HR strategy. And if HR is HR function is a very strong function in the organization because it deals with the human resources. It deals with the people. So people happen to be the most important other key assets of the organization. So that's why we discuss about HR strategy. So when we discuss HR strategy, we said that a company really should think about anybody who's trying to make HR strategy. He should start with the what is a business strategy, and what is a vision, mission, and all that what we talked about in business strategy. But it's very important that we start uh, with the business strategy. And really, HR strategy is it is regarding the people related approaches. It's all the people related solutions which we try to do, which address the business challenges, because ultimately the whole organization is working towards the business objectives, and to meet the purpose of the organization. And for that, of course, business strategy has tried to develop or strengthen the competitive advantage. And since the whole organization is working towards that, then HR strategy should also aim towards it. That means it should aim towards meeting the business challenges ultimately. So you remember we had this kind of this figure we discussed that all the people related approaches which are towards the uh, okay, so that's the one which we discussed. Uh, Ultimately, all the HR strategy should also be aligned to the structural and cultural context, and that's why the third circle is context. So ultimately, our HR strategy should be able to support whatever is required for having a competitive advantage over the rivals, and it should be aligned to the our context. Our context means our structural and cultural context. So that's important because same HR strategy for two different organizations in the same industry may not work as effectively. So that means even in the same industry, two organizations providing the same product or services will have different HR strategy because the context is different, and maybe the business strategy is also different. So this is what we discussed, and I'll quickly say how we build the HR strategy. We start with the company strategy. We looked at company's business, what's the purpose, what's the competitive advantage, and what are the critical challenges which the company is facing. And regarding that, all the critical challenges and competitive advantage, what are the people related challenges? Because we are an HR function talking about HR strategy. So we should try and identify what are the people related challenges and what are the critical functions. We also discussed in quite detail about critical function. And if you remember, we had this kind of a 2 by 2 matrix. On the x-axis, we had um, uh, on the y-axis, we had what we call strategic relevance. So the right hand half are the those functions which are very important for the from the strategic perspective. So all the critical functions, all the critical functions for the strategy, business strategy, are displayed on the right hand side. And we also look at the top half. Top half, the y-axis is about talent availability, and we look at the right half. That is the functions where people are very difficult to recruit. The talent availability is low. The topmost of the y-axis is very low availability, while the bottom is high availability. So this is what we discussed, and we said, okay, when we are developing our HR strategy, we must take into consideration the uh, the bottleneck functions and the key functions. Bottleneck functions are the ones which are um, on the upper half of the 2 by 2 matrix, and key functions are which are on the right half of the this thing. And we should be able to do that. And we should be able to develop this strategy which looks after the this thing. And we also talked about that. Then after identifying all the critical functions and people related challenges, then we look at what are the various approaches which we may have to do it. For example, this key functions and all that we talked in aspect of talent acquisition. Similarly, we can talk about performance management system and all that. So all the various approaches should be taken into account the organization's reality, organizational context first. And based on that, we may have to do it. And then when we try to really design our HR interventions, we have to ensure that there is a alignment with the structural and cultural context. So this is something very important. Okay, so and what do we mean by the cultural and this thing, that if what kind of organization, what kind of culture we have, is it authoritative or participative, what is kind of hierarchical structure we have, and what is our approach towards uh, our people, are we trusting them, or we are driving them through various punishment measures, or we are awarding them, we respect the individual. All those cultural and structural contexts are to be taken into account when we come out with the right solutions. Okay, so this is what we discuss in the HR strategy. uh, Very important, because all the people who belong to HR function here in this audience, they would find it very important, because they may at some point of the career, they may be asked to develop the HR strategy. Okay, today we are going to talk about the training and development function. So this is training and development is training function is a subsystem, subpart, subfunction of HR, overall HR. So we are going to talk about the training and development. Okay, now let me ask a question. The question is, why should we train our people when we have recruited the right people for the right job? Remember, when we recruit people, and it says we should have right people for the right job at the right time, right place, and so on and so forth. So if we are doing a good recruitment, if our acquisition of talent is very systematic and very nice, then in that case, why should we train our people? Why should we invest money on the training of people?
May I?
Yeah, yeah.
Sir, may I, Chandrakant?
Yes, yes, yes. One by one.
Sir?
Yeah, speak.
Yes, sir. For one reason that I can give is for the updation of the skills. Because when you recruit people,
Hmm.
It may we recruit for a longer duration. We don't want them to, we don't want to keep on recruiting people as
Hmm.
and when new skills are, I mean, there in the market. For example, if somebody is good with somebody was good with Android, but then iOS software came. So then, either we want the person, the developer, to understand the new software, learn the new software, or we recruit the new one. Now, considering the cost benefit,
Yeah.
we would always require, go for the updating of the skills than for the new recruitment, unless and
Hmm.
otherwise it is practically impossible to, or practically very cost, not so cost effective, very, expensive for the company to invest in training.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your name, please?
Bhumi,
Uh,
Bhumi,
Huh?
Bhumi.
sir,
Okay. 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 Yeah.
sir,
Somebody else was
Chandrakant,
saying something. Okay. Please.
sir, Chandrakant here. Sir, every
Yeah,
company has,
Chandrakant. Yeah.
yes, sir, every company has different culture, different values, different product, different services, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
to that person to basically get into culture of that company is very important to give him the right training, right frame of
Mm-hmm.
mind, what exactly company is expecting,
Mm-hmm.
and services or what other products are available, competitive advantage over the others. That's why training is required for the even for the right person or the right job.
So we were,
Any other?
may I
Sir?
say,
Sir,
Yeah.
so when we were talking about the
Yes.
organizational pressures during our initial session, we also understood the organization has pressures from technology, globalization, competition. So from
Yeah.
time to time, we have to meet the technological changes and what our
Mm-hmm.
competitors are doing in today's time, besides the
Mm-hmm.
globalization. So we need to train, even though we have hired the right people, but we have to upskill them from time to time.
That's right. So I think any other person who wants to
yes,
answer
sir, yes, sir.
something, please.
Rupesh this side.
Yeah,
Yeah, yes,
Rupesh.
sir.
Yeah.
Rupesh this side. Actually, in this
Rupesh. Yeah.
fast-changing business scenario,
Yeah.
we need to update our employees the desired KSA, I mean, knowledge, skill, and this
Mm,
attitude.
mm.
So that is
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
required thing which we have to
Yeah.
upgrade our
Yeah.
employees.
So that means when we recruited a person, we recruited a person with certain skills, certain competency, and all that. And we did our best to recruit the right kind of person. But the organization is in the environment which is changing very fast. And we discussed in the pestle and industry environment, if you remember, everything is changing. And in the changing environment, the skills which we recruited the person with may not be as relevant, or he may have to, as somebody mentioned, that we may have to upskill him with the required kind of skills which are going to be required in the changing environment. And that's the reason why we have to really change, because we invest quite a lot of money on the training. Can anybody say what is ROI on training investment? What do you understand
Return
by
on
return on
investment.
investment? Yeah, return on investment. Whatever we spend on the training, do we really get the return on investment?
Sir, I'm from
Difficult to
Mitra.
measure, sir.
Yeah, difficult to measure, absolutely
Yes,
right.
sir.
But actually, if we are able to achieve our business objective, and spending some amount on training, but we continue to achieve our objectives, that means the return on investment is pretty okay. Because you're right, it is not very easy to measure. So, but then there is, and we have seen in number of companies where they put no training. hmm, they invest nothing on that. If the performance goes down, and then there have been number of studies as to whether the training has been useful or not, and that's why a number of attempts have been made to assess the impact of training. impact of training. You may not be able to directly correlate with the profit growth or something, but there is people definitely have this thing. So when we discuss about the business strategy, and we discuss this chart, which says the roots of competitive advantage, and roots of competitive advantage was distinctive competencies of the people, because distinctive competencies, and if you remember what distinctive competencies is, it is something, our competencies which are better than any rival in the market. So that are distinctive competencies, and we formulate our business strategy based on the distinctive competency. And these distinctive competency lead us to competitive advantage, and which means superior profit. However, the external environment is constantly changing, and to survive and grow, we have to continuously upgrade the capabilities which are relevant today, and also to meet future needs. So that is the reason why we need to continuously do some training and development interventions, and this will capability building and the distinctive competencies, and finally our strategy will then be tuned to the distinctive competency. So as we understand now that it is extremely important that our we do training, and we do a training in such a manner uh, that our strategy gets competitive advantage gets strengthened. uh, so that is important. So I keep on talking about strategy and training strategy and all that. So ultimately, training strategy is a mechanism which provides tools required to build competencies uh, in order to make the organization highly competitive. I mean, in order to really have a great competitive advantage. So, but there are two prerequisites whenever you make a effective training strategy. The two prerequisites. Number one is that it should be aligned to the organization purpose and competitive advantage. I keep repeating myself, but this is so important to be kept in mind while doing training strategy, developing training strategy, that I repeat it once. Probably I'll be repeating again in my session this thing. So, and the second prerequisite is whatever training approaches we finally arrive at, okay, that should be aligned to the structural and cultural context. Like HR strategy, when we developed, we wanted to have the HR strategy should be aligned, HR approaches should be aligned to the company's structural and cultural context. And similarly, when we develop the training strategy, that should be aligned to the company's structural and cultural context. So when I discuss in the session, you will find how we are going to align ourselves, our training approaches to the structural and cultural contexts which are there. Okay, so now why it is important? You can look at this diagram. Business context means what are the tasks which we are undergoing in what we are the tasks which are undertaking in our business, what are the challenges we are trying to meet, what are the again business requirements, competencies. They're all business context. Okay, now from business context only we get training objectives. Training objectives means wherever we find that we are not able to meet our business objective, there are some training objectives. And training objectives are then in the training context, what we do is we identify training context, we are instructor, formats, assessment, all this is done in training context. And then finally, what happens is this learning, whatever is there, it gets transferred to the business context again. So you can see all our training, whatever we do, should be emanating from the business challenges, business objectives, and all that. And then whatever we learn here, it should then finally support. It should support the again the business. So this is where we say that business context is important. Okay, so now let's get back to the how do we develop training strategy? It's very much like HR strategy. I mean, I've used a similar kind of a diagram also, figure also is the same, because we should be very clear. There's number of things which are which we have to keep in mind in both HR strategy and training strategy. So again, in training strategy, as I mentioned here, that we start with the company's strategy, business strategy. What do we mean by that? We identify what our strategic business objectives, which is important. What do we want to achieve? Okay, that means look at the goals. What are hard goals? Hard goals, which is the real figure work. So, profit, increased revenue, productivity, and all those things are hard goals. Okay, uh, or uh, what are the soft goals? Soft goals could also be like we want to build our brand, we want to have provide a great customer experience to our customers, we need to have a great organizational culture. These could be soft goals. Okay, so there are, we identify business objectives, we try to find out what are the key goals are there. Then we define what are the performance results necessary for achieving them. We identify goals. Now, what are the things which you do in order to achieve it? For example, uh, if you want to have a higher revenue, we have to increase sales. Very clear. And similarly, if you want to have a great customer experience, we want to provide great customer experience to our customers, we should have less number of customer complaints. Okay, so this is number two. So that's why whatever the goals are there, what is it which are required to be done in order to do that way? And third is, then we identify roles. Who are the people who are delivering that performance? Identify the roles, task, and the competency area. What is it that results in delivering those results? Okay. For example, if you look at the higher sales, we have to look at how would our salespeople, are they able to communicate well with the clients? Are they first contact calls? How do they do the first contact? Or let's say if you want customer experience, then we should also know, is our support team very knowledgeable about providing a good customer service, customer experience or not? So this is something which is required to be done. Then next will be that what are the gaps? Evaluate the gaps which will identify your learning goals. So let's say if you find that your salespeople are not able to convert their calls to orders, okay, that means there is some problem about this thing. Or let's say if your supports people, support people, they are not able to communicate very well, uh, so then this may be, communication may be a problem. Okay, so that is so this is the reason that we identify the gaps. uh, Gaps could be a, let's say communication skills may be a gap which needs to be filled in. Okay, then so employees uh, okay, so that is the one which, and then we come to the strategic alignment of initiatives, how we align them with our structural content. What is important is just we just don't do some MDPs, management development programs, without really identifying whether that program is required for meeting the objective or not. That is something which, if you don't do it, that there is going to be a misalignment. And this thing, there has been some studies which say that 12% of employees feel that what they learned in the bandwidth development programs, they are they cannot apply in the work context. That means 12% of employees only feel that they can apply whatever they learned in the job. Otherwise, majority, 88%, did not were not able to apply, because the 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 training program was not very relevant to their needs. 67% of businesses fail because they cannot execute the well formulated. This is okay. So I'll give you example. Example. Now, supposing we have a problem uh, that uh, we are not able to get the right people. We are making we are starting some organization, uh, some business, and for, let's say, we have started some business, but we want to grow, and for growth we are not getting the right kind of people which are required for really do the business. So then, and you remember, bottleneck functions are some bottleneck functions are those functions where the requirement is high but people are not available. There could be also some key functions which are required and all that. Remember, again, coming back to the same 2 by 2 matrix, talent availability on the y-axis and strategic relevance on the x-axis. These are the people who are bottleneck functions and the key functions. Now, if they are not available, then how do we manage it? So one solution will be that we really do the external hiring in the area where a lot of people are available. Okay, in the area, in those functions which are connected to this, but then their people are available. So here, these people we recruit from outside and do what we call internal development. We really go for developing those people for our bottleneck function as well as key functions. So this is something which is a solution. So if you really look at our training strategy, so we found out that there is a challenge here of not getting the right people. If we are not getting the right people, we look at the gap, and then what we do is, instead of taking from outside, we develop those people inside, internal development, homegrown, and then of course we start training, developing them in the in the context of this, aligned with the structural and cultural context. So we come out with, let's say, executive training scheme, and continuously we do that. This is how a training strategy can be developed. I just give it an example to display that diagram of building building training strategy. So the training strategy, how we implement, is primarily through the uh, we do very gap analysis. We mentioned in that. So that gap analysis will give the training needs. Training needs analysis is important. The first stage is that looking at the gap between what is required, what skill level is required, and what skill level exists in our organization will show us the gap. So if we do the gap analysis, we start getting the need of the organization, and then we design the uh, training methods, training programs, contents, training objectives, methods, media, costs and budgets. Then we do the training operation through the uh, depending on what duration, schedule, infrastructure is required, trainer, and ultimately, whatever training we have delivered, that is to be assessed and see that are we able to optimize that or not. And in case this results of our evaluation will go back to the design part, and we modify our design depending on the uh, so this is the total cycle of this thing. So now let's look at the training need analysis. Training really refers to a situation when individual or a group is supposed to solve a problem, but they are not able to solve the problem. So the idea is that I'm required to do a particular job, but I am not sure how to do the job, and that's where the training needs really comes. So it could be about the individual, or it could be this thing. So training situation is that I have a problem, which I want to solve. I have a problem, and I don't know how to solve the problem. So the training need comes, that is a training need, because I don't know how to solve the problem. So I identify a need, I give training to that person, and finally the person knows how to solve the problem. So it's simple as that. It's very simple as that. So it could be a individual, it could be a group as a whole, like maybe a sales group or marketing group or something. They want to solve the problem, they don't know how to do it, so we provide training for them. Now there could be numerous such problems in the organization, huge number. I mean, we have 1,000 people in the organization, and you may have much more than 1,000 problems on this. Numerous training needs. Problems are everywhere, and they may not be very visible, that I do not know. I mean, you may not even know that a person is. People may be unaware that they don't know how to solve the problem. It could be that. This could be not a conscious learning need. It could be very uh, at all. So large number of problems normally in the organization get solved by the informal learning. Yeah? If I don't know how to do a thing, I ask my colleague that how do you do. I find out somebody who knows how to do a thing, and then I learn from. So huge number of problems training needs get solved by informal learning, which where the any training intervention may not be even required. No? And so normally training needs are difficult to be identified in the organization. Okay, so like supposing as a training in charge, you go to a particular uh, person, and in some other function, let's say you go to the marketing guy and meet a person in the marketing and say, what are your training needs? Well, he may not even know, he may not even be able to articulate it, for example, because it is not very easy to be identified. Maybe if you ask his boss, his boss may be able to tell you, but even the bosses also may not really know why a particular thing has not been done correctly, or what had not been. He may not put his thumb on this is the problem, this is where he failed, and all that. So he may not be able to. So sometimes bosses do that if they're very informed and aware boss is there. He may be able to even mention that this guy needs this particular inputs. But number of times you find now what they do is they say, okay, send him to this particular course. Send him to a communication program, communication skill program, something like that. So they might broadly give you some idea. But what if there is a critical situation where a person failed to deliver goods, if you analyze that critical situation, maybe you may be able to put your finger on as to what is it that he required to learn, or what is it that you may give some inputs to him, so that next time in a similar situation he will not be this thing. So people sometimes when they fail, they become so overwhelmed that they are not able to identify why I failed, or his boss also may not be. So uh, training needs are at various different levels and all that. So this is something, training needs identification is not very easy. Sometimes you trying to capture it from the performance appraisal forms, because we ask every individual to write what is the training which you need, and he might give some random kind of a thoughts on it. Or sometimes his boss also may be able to give you right, sometimes he may not be. So but that is one input, of course, is for your training. Yeah, training need identification is required to be done at three levels. First is the organization needs. Organization needs is the one, what exactly is if the organization is not meeting its current performance standard or objectives, that means there is something wrong. And if you diagnose that, it might start pointing towards the organization training need. Okay, so if you're not, your products are not selling because the quality is not very good, then you may start really uh, it may start pointing to that quality control or operations, and where the people are building quality into the products, that may be weak. So that is a one thing. So number of times, I mean, uh, this is the chart which shows any capability, whether it is are we doing it better than our competitor or not. That is one. And second thing is capability, whether it is strategically important or not. Again, this is 2 by 2 matrix. This x-axis shows the strategic importance of that capability. Y-axis is whether we are doing it better than the competitors or not. So this is, if the capability is of strategically very important, and if we are doing better than our competitors, then that will be the key strength. That will be a key strength, because we are doing better than others, and that's important. However, whatever is strategically important, but we are not doing as good as our competitor, that is a key weakness. So if we can identify key weaknesses, that will give us idea about the training needs of the organization as a whole. Okay, so this key weaknesses must be converted to the key strengths if possible, and we can. It may also happen that we start a new business, I mean, one new product line, or we new service line, or we have some large scale change management program, or we are forming a joint venture, many big key projects which we are undertaking. For that, we may not be completely equipped to handle those things, and that also will become the key, and which are ultimately should be a key strength. So we key weaknesses may be converted into key strengths through the training intervention. That's an organization as a company as a whole. But then there could be group needs. Group needs means that a particular group, it could be a team or department or a function or subunit, they are group needs. Similarly, if the group is not meeting its performance or the objectives, then if we diagnose it, and it might uh, be identification of certain weaknesses that are there, and that shows the training needs. And similarly, individual, if the individual is not performing as well as he should, to current performance is less than expected, then, and that may be because of changes in method, process, or new competencies or new skills which are required, then that will show up the individual needs. So these are the three different layers of the training need identification. So after we identify the training needs, then we move towards a training operation. So this is another finer areas of how do we identify what training activities we have to do, what are the training operations, and how do we do it. So first is identification of training needs, and then which are the target groups which are there. And as I mentioned, which we decide through the organization needs, group needs, and individual needs. So once we identify these needs, then the next, and how do we identify these needs? For example, if you want particular, let's say you want finance department's group needs. Hmm? Normally, organization needs will be decided by your uh, uh, performance management group
Top
at the
management.
corporate level or the senior. General manager, CEO normally has a fairly good idea of how the where pain points are and what is required to be done as far as training intervention is concerned. So normally CEO and head of the departments and all that, they will be able to identify organization needs. Group needs, normally, if you want to know, let's say you want to understand what is the training need of marketing function. So you may have to probably go to the marketing head, identify with him, along sit with him, have a great have a detailed discussion with him, structured interviews, and in an interview you identify what were the objectives and how much have you achieved and what could be the reason, diagnose those reasons for um, shortfall in the performance and all that. And ultimately, you should be able to, when you keep on probing deeper and deeper into the shortfall, you will be able to identify what could be the training needs. And second, which I mentioned to you earlier, critical incident techniques, whatever happened, which had created some sort of a disturbance in the department or in the client interactions and all that. So those things, critical incidents, if you try to identify and you are able to have some idea about it. And I said performance rating, performance management system always gives you certain um, training needs. uh, and of course balanced scorecard. So I think there are a number of need assessment methods which are supposed to be conducted, um, and for different layers, different layers of the organization. So that's how we identify the training needs. So once we have identified training needs, the next step will be that these training needs are to be classified into distinct training categories. uh, because training needs could be a large number of training needs are there. Now, of course, you have to prioritize also. Prioritize means then you identify what you're going to do training in this year, in this period or something, or which one first, uh, which one first, or which one now, and others one maybe later. So that's kind of prioritizing always there, because every time you do some training, your budgets are limited. You do not have unlimited budget so that you can handle all the training needs together. So you have limited budget. So you always have to prioritize. Yeah? You have to prioritize. And when you prioritize, again, you go back to those critical functions, key functions. As I mentioned, key functions are those where a small improvement in the performance gives a huge benefit to the organization. Uh, So when you have a limited budget or something, where do you invest your training money? You invest in those key functions in order to have the huge return on your investment. So that's one thing, or something very critical which you want to address. Again, critical in terms of your business objectives. If there is a business objective which is suffering because a particular um, training need, then you prioritize that. So that is one kind of prioritization. The second thing is you have to categorize different kinds of training uh, into distinct categories. Let me this thing the training based on the training characteristics, whether they are individual or the group wise, whether they are short term or long term, whether they are unique or they could be recurring. uh, so based on these consideration, you have categories. So I'm giving some examples of training categories. Well, for example, an employee does not know how to use Excel sheet. You may find in a organization there are some people who are not able to use Excel sheet. Now, if you look at the characteristics of this thing, this learning is not a new, well, it's learning which could be given to the person. Learner is individual. It is a short term, and it's a unique kind of a training need. So what we need to categorize them into is the individual training on demand. he was using computer, he could not use Excel sheet for solving the problems. So it is an individual training on demand. On demand means that it occurred whenever it was required to be used. That skill, is lack of skill occurred because he was not able to use it. So it's demand. So you may, based on the category, you may identify the solution that since it's a individual, I don't have to do training program for this thing, and I would suggest him to do a tutorial on the YouTube or something. There are a number of such tutorials available in the YouTube of how to use Excel sheet and all that. So I might be able to give him that solution. Now look at the other training, other need. Some employees need to improve their project management skill. Now, this is not an individual, some employees only. So some employees means only an individual, but there's a group of individuals, and then we have a midterm. It's not immediately, but it's a midterm. It's a recurring because our project management is going on and all. So we might be getting people who work on project management. So in this particular case, it may be a standard group training. That means a classroom seminar, classroom 1 week duration or something, where all those individuals who require that are supposed to be put together. And this is a different category of this thing. Let's look at a third category. Some managers don't know how to deal with critical situation. Their people handling have been causing some critical situation which needs to be done. Again, this is a group one and all that, but ultimately for this behavioral and situational reflection, that kind of listening, that could be done through peer coaching. It could be so it could be facilitated. Normally, classroom training program may not be able to help that much. More than that will be a coaching, peer coaching or something. Other could be a team has to develop a new product in which is in the beginning stage, and nobody knows how to solve the problem, a new product, how to this thing. So it is learning not through some medium, but it's a creation. And in that case, what you do is you complex problem solving is a category, and you have to have a creative project work. Project assignments have to be given in order to this thing. So in short, what we are doing here is identifying distinct training categories. And there could be a good number of training categories, but we are focusing now. We are trying to focus our attention to something which is doable, something which we can handle it at this thing. So distinct training categories are there. Now, once that is done, now is the important point. How do we do this thing? We have to align our training activities to cultural and structural context. That this is something which I emphasized in the beginning. I'm also emphasizing right now. So let's understand this little better. Okay, so training priorities, the context comes from what is your corporate training philosophy. Okay, it really refers to what is the corporate training philosophy, because that's how you're going to deal with that category of training depending on your philosophy. So and this is based on your total context. So let me give you some example. Training philosophy is something like, who is responsible for competency development in your company? Who is responsible? Um, Now uh, there could be two situations. One could be that uh, as a company is responsible, and particularly in the company, HR department is responsible for training and development of the people, competency development. So here the responsibility of training of people lies with the company, lies with the within the company HR department. There could be another company which says, no, employees are responsible for their development. We are not responsible for training and development. We want people should come and should be with a particular skills and capabilities. If they don't have it, they better acquire it. I'm not responsible. I am responsible for results. Huh? So there could be something, but the company always say, even those companies which believe in this philosophy, they also say that we will enable them for developing their own competency wherever necessary and wherever and whatever is desired. That means we will help them, but the responsibility lies on them. Responsibility lies on the individuals or the people. We will provide whatever. So here you see the difference between the two philosophies. One company says that we are responsibility, we take responsibility for your development and this thing. On the other, they say that we are not responsible. You are supposed to equip yourself. However, we will provide you training whenever you want, whatever training you want, and we will provide you whatever other support you want, we will provide you. See, there are two different philosophies. Have you come across any companies which are, I mean, mostly companies at least show to the people that we are responsible to take your career development, we are responsible for development of your competency development and so on and so forth, training and all that is our responsibility. Most companies, they tend to do that. In reality, number of companies really do the second part. Huh? They said that it's your responsibility. And any question on that? Anybody has different view on this thing?
No, sir, what you said is correct. I mean, in most of the large organizations, this is the way they do. I mean, the employees need to update themselves. They do definitely enable, company definitely enables us by
Yeah.
reimbursing or by providing us the measures
Yeah.
that are required.
So I've seen a number of companies, particularly in the private companies. I'm not talking about the bigger companies, much bigger companies. They probably have that entire infrastructure, training institute and university or whatever, academy or something. But
Yes.
a good number of medium scale and all that, there the people say that you are supposed to improve yourself. I'm more concerned about the results, about your performance, and your benefits and everything will be linked to that. And yes, however, I will, if you feel that you should be getting this training, go ahead and do it, and we'll spend the money on that. But then your performance should really be improved. So we have a two different philosophy. So that is one kind of a context which you are talking about. Let's take other approaches and whatever. Company one is a one which says individual learning, that and they believe in each individual learning and all that. Company two say learn from others, social learning. Social learning means you are not the first one to be this thing, or your colleagues are there. Learn for social learning, and number of times people learn from each other. So in the company one, you learn from managers and trainers, while in company two, you learn from others. There's a very nice, interesting uh, this thing. Supposing this is a group, and each T represents an employee, and the top of the T, that horizontal bar, the width of the horizontal bar represents his knowledge width. That means he is aware of his general knowledge about everything, awareness and all that. And the vertical bar of the T is depth of knowledge. So you see, all these people who are having the same kind of length of vertical and horizontal bar, they are the members of different groups. But there is one gentleman in the group who has got huge depth of knowledge, he's expert, and not only that, he has had huge width of knowledge. That means he's a very well aware of his width. He has number of areas where his knowledge is good. Now, if a person, any member wants to learn, from whom will he learn from? Any ideas? Any learning which any or any training is to be given, who will give training and who is going to learn from whom?
From sir, Rupesh said from bigger one and each other. I mean, they can learn from each other also.
Yeah. So I think in this very clearly you find that the person who has got a long vertical and a huge thing, he's the guru. He's the person. Well, he's a super guru. Maybe his boss. Maybe the boss. Boss may
Yeah,
probably
that's
have a lot of experience, and therefore his knowledge, depth of knowledge is very high. He also has a lot of experience, which has broadened his vision, and so he is the person who is going to give the training to this thing.
Or
Now,
yeah, sir, I'm Pankaj Sharma this side, or could be from any subject matter expert.
yeah, you're right, absolutely right. If the boss is not good enough, a boss says, okay, I will bring another person with the long vertical bar and this thing. That means he's going to bring from outside some expert, you know, who will give training to you. So that is that, you're very right on that. Okay, now look at the that means learning from experts. Really, employees learn from bosses or professional trainers who have professional superiority and huge experience. Now look at the other group. And today organizations have, particularly in IT sector, there are number of organizations. Each member has lot of depth and lot of deep knowledge. Uh, and they are in a particular, their own particular areas, so they have deep knowledge. And their boss may not have that deep knowledge as these members, but he has a huge width of experience, this broad experience. He's a boss. Now, in such a case, if this group is to learn, where do they learn from? Not from their boss, right?
From an expert.
No, no, from different
each other.
people. So here this is primarily from the different colleagues of them, learn from others, employees learn from and with others. So you are learner and trainer at the same time, and there are good number of organizations where people really work together. If somebody, particularly in the IT area, where there are different verticals, different in each vertical there are certain expertise which number of employees have got that expertise in that. They keep learning from each other all the time. They keep training, keep learning from each other. So this is where this thing from managers or from other. Third aspect is off the job or on the job. Off the job means you learning requires you go out of your working environment. From your function you go to your training center, for example. You go and then you learn from somebody, learn from the experts and all that, and come back and transfer the learning on your job. So that is off the job. But then there are organizations where people learn on the job. While doing the job they are learning. By doing the job they are learning from each other. They every time, and that is, you don't really take off from your work, but at the same time you're learning. Good number of people learn on the job, and that learning is highly effective because you are learning while you're working, and then that cycle of working and learning reinforces your learning and you get insight to this thing. So that is another way of doing it, because in of course off the job gives you a professional training, some benefits, some positive plus and minus side is both the sides. Professional training environment, you get expertise from the people, and then you have job related disruptions. That's a negative side, that you go off the you're working, but then also you are able to networking opportunities you get. While in this case this is much cheaper because you're not investing on anything. So lower cost, quick application of new skills. Whatever you're learning, you're applying it. So you become more proficient and all that, and provides a lot of motivation. And so these are two different approaches, which off the job or on the job, planned or on demand. Now, what is planned? Planned is something where it has been decided by the bosses or the company as a HR, part of the HR strategy, that we will provide you training. You may not need it right now, but will provide you training, and which may be required at some later point of time, or we will provide you training just in case you need to have it. So that's a planned training. huh? But training on demand is that you identify the training needs, and that's the time you want a solution, you want to get trained, and that's why. So it is a instant solution of your lack of training skill, lack of learning, lack of competency. That means whenever you need something and you want to get trained, and you get the training. So training on demand or planned training. Let me give you example. One of the organizations I worked for, there, I mean, it was uh, we had exit training scheme, because as I explained in the previous example, that we were not having enough people what we wanted in the organization, and they were not available in the market. So we had to have an internal exit training scheme. Now, if you have exit training scheme, we did some plant training, because when the engineers they move up the organizational hierarchy, there are different layers. So in the beginning, employees manage their own job. After some time, they have to manage their teams. After next growth, they manage managers, and ultimately they become GM, general manager, something, managing organization. So they are four broad layers of managerial skill. And we then decided that since we have taken them as plain engineers, we will provide them training intervention every time they tend to move, they are required to move to the upper layer. That means if they are managing their job themselves in the lowermost layer, and when they have to be managing teams, we will provide at this level only a managing skill, some sort of a foundation, basic managing skill, and so on. So every time an employee tends to move to different layer, we have what planned intervention for them. So this is a planned approach, planned training approach. Okay, and of course, external hiring is only limited to certain this thing. While on learning on demand means that if you are a learner, you want something training to be done, we provide, I mean, organization provides lot of facilities. Like he can go to the supervisor to find out. We can he can probably go to off the job training if it's available. Colleagues, experts, he may ask. Some simulation exercise he might do, or he might even get his demand fulfilled by training resources available outside the organization. Today, as you know, there are a lot of outside organization, external experts, external off-the-job seminar, conferences, and so on, books and articles. You have online courses available, blogs available, YouTube tutorial we talked about, and so on. So there is a huge training resources available outside the organization, and there are quite a few available within the organization. So a person who wants to learn something, wants to sort of acquire some skills, he probably have number of resources available in the organization provides number of resources available to him for this thing. So this is planned and on demand. Formal and informal. Formal training is something which is done in a training center or some institution or some business school and all that. Informal training is something which is unconscious learning which you do, and people also learn a lot through informal learning. Informal learning comes as a with your interaction with the people, or coming to this thing. There are certain training which is done ordered by seniors, that the seniors tell the candidate, tell the employee that you go and attend the training. That is ordered by this thing. And some are employee driven. Employee himself comes and asks this thing, I want to learn these things and I want to attend it. So employee driven, or ordered by senior. I was talking to one of the trainers once, from a very well-known private company, and I and other trainer was who was coming from a public sector. He was telling, uh, in that particular conference I'm talking about, which is the training managers conference, a person from the public sector was telling that we have number of training days, at least minimum training days, that each person has to undergo training. That means they have a policy that every employee of the organization will undergo at least 1 week training. And that's why he says that we want everybody to should get trained. On the other hand, other HR head or training head from one private company, he says, in our case, what I do is whatever training budget is allocated to me, is allowed to me, I try to find out the key functions and the critical functions. Okay. And out of that key functions, the critical functions, I try to invest a lot more on training the people who require it and who belong to this thing. He was saying that if I have a limited budget, why should not I spend that money on people who are high performance? I mean, who are probably give me a better and better results. Why should I waste on people who may not be doing the who are low performance, who do not give very high performance? Now that is this is a different kind of a context which we are talking about. So we have a long cycle, short cycles. Some people have believed in short cycle, job requirement or curiosity, learning transfer, whether or so these are the different cultural and social context I'm talking about. And if you see, there could be a company which is following this. And now, supposing, where does your company stand? Like, supposing company one is primarily a conventional training approaches, and company two is little more agile kind of organization. Company one, if you give 0, and company two 10, where is your organization located between two, company 1 and 2, 0 or 10? Where is it located? Now, depending on where are you located, based on all these contextual and cultural context, so depending on, so your training approaches will be formulated based on that. Okay, so that's where I was talking about. This is a traditional approach, and this is a more unconventional approach which we talked about. So not that all the companies will be totally at 10, they may be having somewhere mix of these two and all that. And now you have to find out what is your organization is really following that. Okay, so that's how we do uh, we try to align our training approaches towards the company's social and cultural context. Then we start thinking on training operations, and for training operations mean really implementing those training approaches. We have prioritized, we have put them in distinct category, we have also aligned with our context, and now we have to really deliver the training, this thing. So training operations, we have to look at the roles which are required to be played, who are the audience, who are the key people, what are the resources which we need, and what kind of formats which you are doing, and through that we implement our training. But this roles players and resources wise, what do you mean by roles? I mean, for any training program, you have an organizer, you have facilitator, you have instructor, learner, evaluator, mentor, and coach. So there are different roles which need to be played. The players would be employees, which are trainee or supervisor, HR function, vendors, customers. You know, you have there are all the way up. In fact, each functionary is within the domain of the training training domain. That means even the I've seen organizations where they train their board members also, because board members also have to perform very well. I mean, training. I mean, even the board of the organization, which is the highest level body, and it has got, let's say, 10, 15 people, which includes some of the director, HR director, finance director, operation director, and so on and so forth. Now, even these people may need and will need some training or the other at different points of time in order to function very well, in order that the board is performing best. You know, some boards are not performing well because their members are not really having all the skills required for the board members. Okay, so I'm saying that, and that's where leadership training, leadership development, so that means leaders at different levels of the organization, they also will be part of your players at some point or further. Third is resources. What resources are required? uh, Infrastructure, what kind of number of companies have their, as I said, training centers, or let's say there are certain organizations which do not have the training halls even, you know, but then that probably is to be provided. What is the budget, internet, materials, what are, and so on and so forth. You know, here, whether you require infrastructure or not, again, is a this thing. When I was talking to one of the trading managers in one conference, and I was that time looking after a training institute, really, of a big public sector. Uh, then I found another training in charge of private sector, and I said, "You have a huge organization. I mean, it's a big company, and so you must be having a very big training center or something like that." He says, "No." I said, "How do you train your people? And where do you train your people?" He says, "I have a limited training infrastructure. I have 10 to 12, what I call them, training designers." I probed into what exactly he means by training designer. Uh, so he says, "I have some people and very well trained experts who are experts in identifying training needs, and who are experts in designing training programs to meet those training needs, and then who are expert in ensuring that these training designs are implemented." I said, "How do they do it?" He says, "These are people who interact constantly every year with a lot of training, with a lot of leadership levels. That means different functional heads and all that. They interview and keep on finding what are the requirement of training. They probe into it and identify the real training needs, and then they sit down together to design a training program, and they do not deliver it themselves. They may be able to take certain sessions, but then they get the best faculty in the world. And he was telling me that we take the experts from Wharton, from Harvard, from different organizations, even sometimes a technical expert from our suppliers end or something, or so that way they collect all these people, design a program get into some hotel kind of environment, and where all the required people, all the trainings which are requiring that, there the programs delivered. And that's what he was saying. He says our training programs probably are delivered by the best of the people, who are experts in different areas, and they deliver the training program. It's very high cost. I mean, the cost is pretty high. However, I do not invest too much on infrastructure and all that, which is a sunk cost to me. So that's what. So you can again see what is the philosophy of that particular company and how they use the resources and so on. Then last is format. Format is very simple. What we do is a classroom or webinar or something, or you uh, coaching. Coaching is another way of developing people, or you give them a big assignment and so on and so forth. So these are the various forms. So you have to, after working out the training activities, you have to identify what are the resources which are required to be done. If you do not have resources, get it. That's simple as that.
Sorry, what is
Because
stretch jobs? Stretch jobs.
instead job space, you give them assignment of a different of much stress, and then you start job space, then he will be able to give his best. He will be stretched and then probably give you, and then in the process learn. Or let's say you want to you give him a very different kind of assignments, where uh, a project which he will do, and learn something on this thing. So a lot of times, I mean, it is succession planning also. Like, you know what the G does? G, when they do in the succession planning, they identify 4 or 5 CEOs from the various companies, and they find that, okay, I have to get a successor of the current CEO, uh, out of these 4 or 5 people who have performed very well in different companies, and then they assign them different companies or different kind of jobs, and that's where they perform for a period of 6 months, 8 months, and then they look at, so that some of the skills which they were not very good at, they get sharpened, or they start performing very well, and then out of these 4 people, then they select one of the CEO. This is a very surprising, but then it works very well. Every time they get the new CEO, that is the previous CEO retires and all that, this is the way to select their CEOs, next CEO. So succession planning, under succession planning, they provide stretch jobs to the candidates who are candidates for the succession of the next CEO. So there are different kinds of formats. While they do it for the CEO level, one can do it at any levels. If you want to looking at supposing you want a um, finance function head, because the uh, current finance function head is retiring, you identify from the second rung and then try to groom them up, and that's succession planning, really speaking. So you develop people for the
So
success.
succession planning and stretch jobs, they have a linkage.
Succession planning and
Uh, Stretch jobs and succession planning, they have a linkage between the two.
no. Succession planning is done through giving them stretch jobs or the different jobs which can make them still better. So that is what I mean.
Okay.
Succession planning is different thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so today, as you know, in the COVID era, uh, which is emergence of a new normal, and work from home is something which is happening in number of industries. Number of industries. In fact, in all industries, there are certain roles which can be done from home, and people are doing and companies are also evaluating whether work from home is something which is good for them or not. So number of companies are finding it that it can help them cost wise, because they can reduce your real estate cost. And in fact, there are certain companies in USA, they have declared that now onwards all time to come, whether COVID is there or not, we are going to work from home only. You know, so number of so they are now selling off their offices or their and let people work from home, and whatever smaller for the some physical group meetings which are there, they have certain space available, but the huge infrastructure there, because they feel that there's no productivity loss and all that, and it is more convenient and so on for everything, and they're reducing their costs. So for some people it comes as natural. I mean, some people are liking it, they enjoy work, while some others were finding it very difficult. So it is case, but I think it is a new normal which is emerging now, and in this, even HR and training strategies will have to be reviewed. So as far as training managers, we have to look into the normal training activity and normal training operations which we have been doing, that also needs to be changed. So our strategy will have to be changed also. Virtual training is becoming an essential component, huh? Because virtual training is something, it can be done anywhere, anytime. That is one good advantage, is that you don't have to, and there is a lot of flexibility. Many things you want to change, anything you want to, this thing, you have to change that particular module. You don't have to create an absolutely new training module. So it has got a lot of flexibility on this. It's a good return on investment. It's cost effective, and it is much more cost effective than the traditional training. uh, that is something which is very clear. It reduces travel expenses. People don't have to come all day from different corners of the country to a central place where the training is happening. And it is also less money is spent on learning materials, money is spent on training venues. So there are large number of benefits which are seen in virtual training. So now you have to decide which one to. I mean, even after the COVID era is over, after this thing, would you like to do virtual training all the time, or would you prefer to go for classroom training, or you have a combination of two, maybe. Because whatever the plus points of the classroom training, that you sometimes you do that to exploit those plus points, or virtual training whenever you want to become this thing. But training is a must. Training is a must, because when today, I mean, for example, today in the various industries, uh, cost is a very important component of their strategy, because cost effectiveness, and whenever there is a cost effectiveness emphasis, axe will fall on training. uh, Still people feel that training is not as essential as other operations. So axe is as going to fall on this thing. However, in such cases, I think virtual training becomes a boon, because it is not that costly. It's not very. So you may decide to have a combination of both, that virtual training and all that. However, you have to take a decision about what is the training strategy I should be able to adopt. So maybe I'll stop at this point, and I would like you to uh, raise any points, any observations, any comments, any questions for that matter. Yeah.
Sir, Chandrakant here. I have one question,
Yeah, yeah,
query.
please.
Yeah, sir, for new training managers, how to evaluate the leadership skills? Is there any specific format or something is there, sir? How to evaluate?
Leadership skill.
Yes, sir.
A leadership skill, I think. Well, how do you assess the leadership skill? The best way to assess leadership skill, give him some assignment, give him some project, and a team of people which is to be done, and let him start and look at the performance at the end of the assignment, how he delivered, and feedback from the people who he led, his people, and what the performance. I think this is way of one of the ways of the understanding the leadership skill. Otherwise, the leadership skill is best judged from 360 degrees assessment. Your the followers as your team members will be able to assess him on his leadership skills. His colleagues who he interacts with for performing his job, and his seniors. So if you get the 360-degree assessment of a person, you will be able to get a fairly good idea of the leadership skill. So first of all, you identify the various dimension of the leadership skills, and on these dimensions, you find out from the 360-degree assessment as to how he is able to how his leadership skills are, and that's how you can get some idea about his leadership skills. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions, please? Okay. You may not have any questions at this point of time, but then please do go through the total context, the notes, and all that. I'm sure you will be able to identify some areas which you need little more inputs. And in the next Sunday, when we meet again for the next class, sixth session, uh, which is, of course, I'm going to discuss how do we implement strategies, because we talked about business strategy, we talked about HR strategy, we talked about training strategy. So all kinds of strategy, and maybe in some other function you may maybe be able to have different strategy. So any strategy, how do we implement it? Because no strategy is effective, uh, no matter how good a strategy you formulate. It is not effective in case it is not implemented well. So what every the best results from the strategy are obtained only after if it's implemented very well. So we are going to devote the next session on implementing strategies. And before the we start the session and next one, if you have any questions on HR strategy or anything on HR strategy or training strategy, today's session, please we will discuss, we'll try to answer your questions on that at the
Sure,
beginning.
sir.
And after that I will take on the implementing strategy. Okay.
I have a
So
question.
yeah.
So, since in one of our assignment question there is a question pertaining to talent strategy, so do we have it covered in one of our session, or you can throw light today something on it?
Talent strategy is I mean, is primarily on the acquisition of talent, and then development of talent, and then retention of talent. So you how do we acquire talent? uh, uh, so it's acquisition strategy of how do we acquire talent, and then talent, as you know, talent once acquired, it doesn't mean that it's good for all the time to come. It has to be developed over a period of over a period, so that talent becomes relevant and becomes more and more effective. And then talent retention, because number of times the talent, good talent, leaves the organization for whatever reason. So it could be his own personal reason, or it could be because of department for the organization, or because of his boss or whatever. Talent, so, and talent retention is another thing, because talent means a good person. Talent by definition, talent means a person who's performing very well, who's delivering good results. So if you want, in the beginning, in the next session, I can talk a little bit about talent strategy. Okay,
Sure,
so
sir.
this
Sure.
really covers three aspects: talent acquisition, talent development, and talent retention. And talent retention then again gets connected to number of other HR districts. Like talent retention means the cultural aspect should be good. Talent retention also means that his compensation benefit, the motivational scheme should be good, and so on and so forth. So I think there are a number of other aspects which get connected. So these are the three basic components of the talent strategy. Okay, so if you want, we can talk about this little more in detail in the next session.
We'll be grateful. Thank you, sir.
So by
We'll do that.
talent, you mean an employee of an organization?
No, 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 no. This point again, I will talk to you in the next session. Talent doesn't mean all the employees. I mean, each person in the organization, by sheer definition, it is not talent. Like let's say, how do we develop? Yes, each person may be having some potential to develop the talent. Now I'll put it this way. Um, Sachin Tendulkar has a talent. What do you feel?
Yes.
Sachin
Yes,
Tendulkar.
sir.
Yeah, he has a talent. Now, when was this talent discovered by him?
After his performance,
When talent was discovered right in the beginning stage. I think when he was 5 4 5 years,
But
6 years, he used to play. We used to have a small bat and all that. And his so talent is something which they say you are born with, which you are born with. However, it doesn't mean that you cannot have talent through development from external source. But number of times, talent is something which you are born with, but then it remains dormant unless it gets nurtured. And then once it gets nurtured, it really. So, number of people have talent inborn, but then it once they nurture the talent, they become it becomes extremely useful. Same goes with Lata Mangeshkar, for example. She had inborn talent, but then it was nurtured right on the earlier stage, and she became such a successful singer and all. So we can talk about this talent, whether every. So what we do in the organization, we identify through various mechanisms, and we identify that this is the talent group. But there may be, and so we have a lot of soldiers in the company. Soldiers are the ones who are doing a great amount of job. So I think no army can win the war without soldiers. So each organization has got the people who are soldiers. They also help in taking the company to a greater height. However, when we talk about talent, we mean who are experts, who have got something potential to do something much more than the normal employee. So that's what try to define. We can discuss more in the
So,
next class.
sir, talent means that the skill that company is looking for in the employee
Yeah. Something which is relevant to the company, and
to his
which
job
is
profile.
which is of a strategic advantage, which is helping the company in meeting their thing. That becomes a talent. Like for example, a singer, a good singer may not be a talent for a automobile, for Maruti, for example, Maruti. A great singer may not be a talent. I mean, in the real sense of the term, organizational wide, he may not be, because singing is not required for Maruti's business, right? So that's what I thought. He is a talent, he's a talented person, but then not relevant to what is required in Maruti is somebody who is expert in designing good cars, manufacturing good cars, and so on and so forth. You know,
All right, sir. Thank you.
any questions? Anything else you
Sir,
want in
sir,
the
could you
next?
please discuss corporate strategies and business strategies also in the next
That
session a
we'll do
bit?
in the last session. Last session
Okay.
when we. So please tell me in the next class. I
Mm,
can talk about corporate strategy, business strategy, but in the last, which is a wrap-up session, and I
okay.
think in that session we'll talk about this. But I think next session I will take on such questions like you said, talent strategy, and any other questions with respect to HR strategy or the training strategy. And in the last session, which is a Sunday after next, we will do the wrap up of the entire course, and in that I will take up some more questions on the business strategy also. When you
Okay,
say
sir.
so, please let me know next in the next session what exactly you want me to cover more
Okay.
in more detail in the last session, which is a seventh session will be the last session.
Okay,
Okay.
sir.
Sir,
Great, great. Thank you.
Okay.
sir,
Yeah.
sir, when you were discussing about HR strategy and business strategy, you said that
Yeah.
corporate strategy is not in our curriculum. Is it so?
Yeah, that is right. Corporate strategy, as I defined, corporate strategy means company should decide as to which businesses one should go into. You know, corporate
Right.
strategy means that where should I do my business? Like, for example, I am operating in the within the country. Let's say I have a business in Gurgaon, or I have business in Chennai or something. And should I go to some other places, Calcutta, for example, or some other, or shall I go outside the country? This is one of the dimension of the corporate strategy. Second dimension is that I'm manufacturing uh, motorcycles, scooters. Shall I go for cars as well? Or if I'm manufacturing cars, shall I go for buses,
Yes.
manufacturing buses? Shall I diversify my business into different products and services? And
Yes, it's
that
in
is
this
part
stage.
of the corporate strategy. Now, this corporate strategy is, we didn't discuss it. It is not in the course because course title is Business Strategy and HRD. Business strategy means one particular business, which what how do I make strategy for that? Okay, so corporate strategy deals with the merger acquisition, globalization. It also diversification. So these are the corporate strategy. We didn't deal with this in this course, and nor is it in the syllabus. Uh, so corporate strategy is something which we're not
Yes,
covering.
that was
And
what you
I
said, sir. I mean, when
tell
like,
me.
if it
Yeah.
is a conglomerate, then if it is a conglomerate, then which strategy would apply? Would it be a corporate strategy or business? And you said only corporate.
Conglomerate. Yeah, okay.
Yes, you said
Conglomerate in the corporate office, they
yes,
deal with corporate strategy.
yes,
But
yes, yes.
in
Right.
different units, they deal with business strategies.
Yes, you very well
Okay.
explained that in that session, in last to
Yeah,
last session, I would say.
yeah. So, I mean, Mr. Kaushal, Professor Kaushal told me in the
Yes.
beginning that we are not covering corporate strategy in this course. So I'm assuming, and the name also business strategy. So I'm assuming that corporate strategy in that. However, if a corporate strategy is understood as a company's strategy,
Yes, yes,
number of times we use interchangeably. We say, if what is your company strategy, and instead of company strategy we say, what is your corporate strategy? Corporate strategy there, it is not intended to be, it is intended to be company's strategy, company's business strategy. So when and that is a wrong word. Sometimes people use it as a corporate strategy. Corporate strategy is really for the conglomerate of a multi-business units. Multi-business companies have the corporate strategy.
all
In a
right,
single business units, we do not have corporate strategy.
okay.
Okay,
So it would be
and this
complete
course
business
is
strategy.
primarily for business strategy.
All right.
Am I clear?
Yes, very clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Okay,
is
good.
there any difference between organizational strategy and business strategy?
No. Organizational strategy is business strategy. However, this business strategy, what organization does is, organization this to meet that business strategies, they tend to then have number of other components of this strategy. And for example, they may have a financial strategy, I mean, functional strategy, HR strategy, operating strategy, R&D strategy, marketing strategy, sales strategy, materials management strategy. So they are all different strategies which are available in the company. But organization strategy is primarily as to how organization is going to meet its objective, and that's primarily is through business organization. Let's supposing you have a organization which is not a business, huh? Which is not a, let's say supposing you have a IMI, for example, or IIM, or IMT Ghaziabad, or whatever. These are not businesses. I mean, they're not trying to run. And there, if it's not a business or it's not a business company, then if you develop a strategy for those organizations, then they may not term it as a business strategy. They say this is organized strategy, and their organized strategy will be defined as each organization will have some objectives. Each organization has objectives. Business organizations have objectives to earn profit or be more competitive and all. Our organizational strategy, if it's a social organization, they may not have business objectives. So their objectives will be some other. So their strategy will be some other organizational strategy. It's not a business strategy. So business strategy is for business organizations. Okay. So organization term sometimes, if you are using organization term as a particular business, then organization strategy and business strategy are the same. But if it is organization is a non-business kind of organization, then their organization strategy this will not be business strategy. It will be the strategy to meet its organization's specific objectives.
Sir,
All
even
right, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah,
even
welcome.
if the
Yes,
corporate
yes.
strategy is not in our curriculum,
Yeah.
can we have some PPTs or some learnings about it after our session is over? I mean, somebody who is really interested, because we as a trainers, we don't want to confine ourselves to just organizations or companies. Later in our times, we may switch on to conglomerate, or if we really get an opportunity with a conglomerate, then in that case, we do need to think about that as well, right?
Yeah, but I can, if time permitting, in the last session, I had discussed very briefly in my last business strategy session about something about the corporate strategy. But if the time is permitting on the seventh session, I can go a little more deeper into it. However, time doesn't permit, so
I
uh,
do understand. But sir, then you
will
can
not be
always
able to do
help
it
us
in
with the
this.
references.
But if you want to contact me offline,
Yes,
you have my, I think, email ID, or uh,
uh,
or I think I can give you my email ID or
please, sir,
something.
please, sir.
You can always get in touch with me to get more inputs on the corporate strategy.
Yes, sir, we would love to.
Okay, and I will also be able to give you certain good articles again on the seventh session. In the seventh session, some good articles on corporate strategy which you can go through. Okay.
All right. Sir, could you please
So
paste your email address in the chat box for us to have it? I mean, if to
uh,
contact you
how
in the
do I send it to you?
chat box, chat box,
Okay, chat box. Yeah, just
through the
one
chat
minute.
box.
Just 1 minute. Yeah, I'm writing it.
All right. We would really appreciate that, sir, because I've always wanted to ask a few questions, but I was like, how
Yeah.
do I contact Agrawal, sir?
Okay. My email ID is Gopal K Agarwal at gmail.com. And I will also got it. And I will also give you my mobile number,
Please,
which
sir.
is 981